news with national impact. Right here on the Jake Merrick Show on the new Freedom 96.9.
All right, guys, welcome back. So good to have you this morning. You're going to love this next segment. We got Linda Murphy with me talking about what's happening in the public education realm and many more things across the state. Good morning, Linda.
Good morning, Jake.
Man, you got up early to be here this morning, huh?
I did, early bird.
And you made the drive from where?
Elk City.
Elk City, out west. That's my birth home. So,
right.
Yeah, I got some great family and friends still out there. Yeah. So thank you for coming this morning. Lots of important things to talk about. Something that I've been talking about a lot and that a lot of people are concerned about here in the state when we look at the drag queen situation over in Western Heights. I've been, like I said, talking about it a lot. Here's a clip I want to play from Ryan Walters' interview with Jesse Waters on Fox. And I think the first thing he talks about is very important. Listen to what he says.
So this is Oklahoma. What's going on in Oklahoma? We always thought Oklahoma was pretty normal.
And that saddens me, right? I mean, that we're being represented around the world. I mean, all eyes are on the drag queen over at Western Heights.
Yes, it is amazing, really shocking.
It is. It is. I'm, again, like you, so thankful for Ryan Walters and his stand against this.
Absolutely.
Here's what he said in this interview with Jesse Waters. Just a quick clip here.
Yeah, look, we are a red state. We have conservative, traditional values. But here's the reality. Even in red states, you've seen the left creep in. We are leading the country here in Oklahoma, fighting back on left-wing woke indoctrination. We are stripping CRT out of our schools, gender theory. We're pushing these social justice warriors out of the classroom. And, hey, we just signed an agreement this week with Prager University. We're going to have Prager University in every school across the state here. So we're very excited about that. But this is the war. This is a war for our kids' minds. It's a war on the family. It's a war on Christianity. They want to break down the family.
So there's no doubt it's a culture war.
Right.
And, we talked about that here before the show, just about the idea of morality and values. And really, there's a clash of worldviews of what people believe is right and wrong.
Right. Right. And then we have law, and we have to look to that.
There you go.
And we've got some standards that have been put in place in law that we have to look to.
And so this recent focus back on Western Heights was really rooted in statutes, Oklahoma statutes, that address moral turpitude.
That's right.
So speak to that a little bit.
Okay. As you know, a couple of days ago, Superintendent Walters very clearly stated that Oklahoma law provides for dismissal due to commission of an act of moral turpitude.
Right.
Well, that is in our statutes, and
it wasn't just something he pulled out of the hat,
not
something
making it up.
Right.
Just like the Chinese contract that got pulled now in Tulsa public schools, which
it was
really
actually
did
there.
Exist.
Yep.
Exactly. If you go to the Oklahoma State Department of Education Standards of Performance and Conduct for Teachers, these are laws, and moral turpitude is found there. If you go to, let's see. There.
She comes prepared. she has a whole stack of info she's going to bring to you this morning.
Too much info. No. Yes, it is right there in Title 70. So go to Standards of Performance and Conduct for Teachers, and you will find that a teacher can be dismissed for what is called moral turpitude. So the question is, what is that? And legally, there's a definition that is given in a lot of different places, but I went to Cornell Law School and found they say moral turpitude is a phrase that describes wicked, deviant behavior constituting an immoral, unethical, or unjust departure from ordinary social standards such that it would shock a community. Well, I think not only our community shocked, but the state and the nation is being shocked.
Yeah, it really is. And there's so many questions I have when I hear this definition. I know whenever you and I are talking, we're on the same page when we hear what is wicked or not normal.
Exactly.
But in another community,
right,
it would be considered good and loving and normal.
Right, and that's what we're dealing with, of course, is where are we as a community, as a state, on this issue. They go on to say at Cornell, in criminal law, the law sorts criminal activity into categories of crime either involving or not involving moral turpitude. The phrase moral turpitude itself has not been clearly delineated by courts because what is moral? Again, that's what we're really dealing with. But I think when we get into this issue, and of course this will be the investigation the State Department of Ed does with legal counsel, of course, to find out exactly how to handle this situation. We're looking at a person who certainly, like everyone else, has a right to do what he does in his own personal
Absolutely.
time.
We're not trying to shut that down at all.
Not at all. And so I just don't want to know all about someone else's sexuality and how they act that out. And when they do this in a public format, and then what really concerns me in this situation is the drag queen story hour connection.
Yeah, exactly. That we're seeing in libraries, and it's targeted to kids. They're not offering this to, adults to come hear drag queen story. It's story hour for children.
Right.
So why?
Exactly. This article says that Drag Queen Story Hour started in 2015, Michelle T. in San Francisco, with the goals of promoting reading and representation of this lifestyle, this choice of life that they're wanting to represent. The events are geared for children 3 to 11 years of age.
Wow.
So this principal has participated as an active drag queen in libraries.
Oh, yeah.
It brings up the question of libraries and what kind of guidelines we have there. This is public money.
Exactly.
And we need to be looking at all of this as a state. We want to do things legally, and I do not want to impose my religious beliefs or my worldview convictions on everyone. That's not what we're talking about.
Right.
But we're talking about a standard of behavior and representation of a profession that would be effective, working with parents. And if parents are not able to work with someone because they don't trust that person, they don't know what they're going to be doing regarding this aggressive effort to bring this lifestyle out publicly.
Right. Well, I said yesterday on the show, if a principal was hired who was a woman,
yes,
and she was also a porn star or a stripper,
right,
there would be some concerns.
Yes.
And I'm not sure she would ever be hired.
Right.
Why? It seems like there is this big standard. If you're transvestite, if you're transgender, we don't use that term anymore, right? I mean, you don't hear that. It's not transvestite,
no,
it's transgender.
That. Right.
But all of a sudden there's a pass because there's this fear of being labeled transphobic.
Yeah.
The fear used to be labeled homophobic, but now it's transphobic. Mm-hmm. And I wonder, what would they say if this principal in his free time with his friends went to blackface parties?
Yes.
They were white. They all put on blackface and they make fun. Yeah, just acting, making fun of black people. Yeah. Not a big deal.
Yeah.
Hey, it has nothing to do with my actual job. Or does it? Does it? I think it does.
Right. And the statement you're making in your choice of acting, in your performance, the sexual activities that we've seen in these pictures that are put out publicly are really not things you want your children to see.
Absolutely not.
To watch, to think about, to have to try to understand.
Well, it's sexual.
At a young age.
They're not supposed to be focused on sexual things at that age.
Right. And when we do this, focusing on sexual things, what are the kids thinking about? This is one of the issues we had with comprehensive sex education. Before all of this developed to this level,
right,
we had comprehensive sex ed. And just having to listen to an hour a week or any ongoing sexual discussion stimulates thoughts in children that might not have even been thinking about this for 5 more years.
Absolutely. Red monkeys. Red monkeys. Red monkeys. Red monkeys. Don't think about red monkeys. Don't think about red monkeys. What are you thinking about?
Exactly.
Yeah, and so if you say sex, that's all they're going to be thinking about. And then when their hormones kick in, then you got a tornado. And it is really destroying our culture. It really is. Mm-hmm. I want to look at this other story here with Linda Murphy. You were highlighted. I really caught a post that you posted on Facebook about this issue out in West Texas that's drawing a lot of attention. Tell us a little bit about what's happening out there.
Well, my experience and why I was really tuning into this was last spring I went to Amarillo, Texas, and spoke to a big group of parents out there that were concerned with the school board races coming up and had been meeting regarding issues coming into their schools. They have a program called Amplify, which Tulsa has used for several years now. I've written about that, and that's a real problematic online curriculum that Tulsa uses. So I went to speak about that, but while I was there that very night, there was a demonstration and protest against West Texas University president of the university in Canyon. And the parents from this group, a number of them went over there to support him because he had determined that he would not allow a drag queen show performance on campus. And that created a big backlash.
So he did not come from OU then, that's what you're saying? So
No, he was... he said that he believed that this type of performance was mocking women and it was misogynistic. So that was his view and his determination, and so they sued him. The group sued him. And then just this week, a few days ago, a federal judge in Amarillo determined that ruled in favor of the president of the college and said that this group, drag show group, did not have a right under the First Amendment to do shows that are sexualized conduct. They can be regulated.
Wow, that's huge, huh? It now sets a precedent in case law.
Yes.
That sexual conduct can be regulated, and this is sexual conduct.
Absolutely. I mean, they know it's sexual. Nobody could say it's not sexual. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Sexual.
Yeah. I haven't been to too many drag shows, but actually zero. But the ones, obviously, we've seen clips all over the news. Unfortunately, we've all been exposed to this.
Right.
And, it's something that you have to turn away from. It's certainly something that I would shield my children from.
Right.
My daughter's on the way to school right now. Hey, Emmy, good morning. She's on her way to school with Mama. She just got the text that they're on the way to school. So, love you. You have an awesome day. And I love my girls, and I protect them, and I have to protect them from the evening news.
Right.
That's showing drag queens as normal.
Right.
And it's very disturbing to people like me, people like you, and to others. They're bringing their children to them.
Right.
To intentionally put them in front of them.
That's right. It's conditioning. Because when we see things over and over, they do become normalized. It's normalizing things that are not healthy, that are not the best spending of time and learning. When we have to take our time out of an education work day to deal with these issues, as a teacher in the classroom, as counselors, we are really taking away from that academic focus, too.
Absolutely. Well, here with Linda Murphy talking about what's happening in our public education system. I've got to go to a break. Coming up out of the break, we're going to dive back into this conversation, really focusing on libraries. So we're going to look at what's happening in the American Library Association and then what Joy Hoffmeister left behind that we're still dealing with right now in our public school education. So you stay tuned.
All things Oklahoma, right here on the Jake Merrick Show, on the new Freedom 96.9.
All right, guys, welcome back to the last leg of the show. So much to talk about, so little time. We got Linda Murphy here talking about what is happening in our public education and our libraries. Speaking of libraries, it seems to be one of the main battlegrounds we're seeing in our culture war. We were just talking about the Drag Queen Story Hour that is largely happening in these libraries. So who's in charge of these libraries?
Well, I want to say, first of all, I spent a lot of time in the library growing up because I loved reading. I loved learning. It was an escape. We didn't have all this entertainment, social media stuff. Right. And if you didn't have a lot of money, you did something for entertainment. It was a good thing to do. So I love libraries. I love pictures of libraries. I mean, I'm just there.
Right. You're a fan of libraries.
I want to say up front, there are more librarians in our state that are concerned about putting anything in front of a child without discretion. There are many, many librarians who are doing a great job, and they're not going to stand up and say, hey, I'm pulling this book, but they have some discretion over this because they're in charge of the library.
Yeah.
And what we find is that the American Library Association has become a very woke institution. In fact, they joined the United Nations in signing, this is on their website, the American Library Association. I went there a couple of years ago to look at what they were saying about library books and policy, because we were finding even a few rural schools in Oklahoma, one outside of Tulsa, had a number of books that were just outrageously sexualized, traumas, being played out, rapes and violence and murder and dismemberment given to K through 12 students and on the shelf. And there were so many.
And there's no separation between grades, right? They're all just mixed in there together?
In some places, that has been the case. Now, fortunately, again, there have been a lot of people, once this started being discussed and they started looking closer at what's in their library, we did have administrators and teachers say privately, hey, we are going to use some discretion here.
Yeah.
And we're going to put some of these books on a back shelf. If they're asked for specifically, they'll be here, but they're not just going to be for everyone. Things like that. They had some discretion.
Yeah, that's good.
I mean, after all, don't we limit the age for driving?
Absolutely.
But we're not banning
tattoos,
cars.
Drinking, cigarettes.
Right.
I mean,
we're not banning cars.
Yeah.
Cars are still in existence, but they're not available for driving for someone that doesn't have a license underage. Okay, so what I found at the American Library Association website was that they have joined and signed on to, officially, the universal rights to free expression and interpretation of the Library Bill of Rights. And on their website, they say, on December 18th, 2013, the United Nations General Assembly adopted a resolution reaffirming the right to personal privacy, applies to the use of communications technology, digital records, requiring the government member nations to respect and protect privacy rights of the individual. We affirm our belief that these are inalienable rights of every person, regardless of origin, age, background, or views. So when I saw that, regardless of age, this is very tricky wording.
Right.
4 years old, 3 years old, 5 years old, regardless of age, they have to be allowed, given, and not disclosed what they have as far as library books at school. This came up because in a rural school in Oklahoma, outside of Tulsa, the librarian told parents that she could not tell them what books their child checked out.
Wow.
Their K-12 child.
Right, right.
And they were shocked, and I was too. I'm like, a librarian said that? Yes. And I thought, where is she getting that?
Never trust anyone who says, don't tell your parents. Usually an indicator that something nefarious, something wrong is happening.
That's right.
And they call it a right.
That's right.
They call it your right as a child to hide something from your parents.
Right. This is the UN Human Rights Treaty. I mean, that's
been
really
adopted by the American Library Association.
American Library Association. And again, it's on their website. If they've taken it off, send me a message and I'll send you a copy because I downloaded it.
Now let's look at some of what we're dealing with now in our public education is leftover from the former administration, from Joy Hoffmeister.
Absolutely.
So what are some things that she implemented that we're still dealing with right now?
Okay, it goes hand in hand with what we're seeing. It's like a culture being developed, an environment. In fact, climate is one of the words that's used in education.
Oh, yeah, we hear it everywhere.
The climate of the classroom, the climate of the school. And Joy Hoffmeister sent out a directive to schools through the State Department of Ed. It's been about 4 or 5 years ago now, maybe 4. Justin Humphreys, who is a state representative over in eastern Oklahoma.
Oh, yeah, love JJ. He's been on the show a few times.
Got with me, called me and said, or his brother did actually, and they came to Edmond. We sat down and talked about this directive and what could be done because he had been given this by a friend of mine who's the superintendent over there who told me also he'd given it to JJ. Anyway, the point was the directive was really telling schools that they needed to create LGBTQ clubs, that they needed to celebrate. Now, I'm not saying giving equal access. We know there's equal access. Mm-hmm. If you allow these clubs, you have to allow those clubs. Okay, so that's equal
Absolutely,
access.
right.
But that's not what this was. This was promoting and celebrating these LGBTQ clubs. In other words, pushing this.
Absolutely. Putting it on the front page
make
of
sure
Google,
you've got
highlighting
one.
it.
Yeah. Honor the teachers that celebrate these students. I mean, it's not anymore about treating people nice and fair and loving and kind and equal opportunity. It's about pushing that ideology.
And a lot of it's coming through the counselors in our school system, correct?
Right. There is a framework that she also created for school counselors, and it's based on the American School Counselor Association guidelines, which is to affirm a student's decision to transition. You know, all of these things are involved in what's happening with the framework that she has set up.
And we're feeling it. We're seeing it everywhere.
Right.
Linda, I so appreciate your time this morning. We need another hour with you or more. There's so much to get to, but we'll have to do this again soon to get some more details. Let me leave you with a little reel here, a little highlight.
He puts everything that's good last. Mine is slightly different. I put America first every single time.
There you go. That's the word. Put America first, and never forget the sovereignty of your person, your state, and your God. I'll see you tomorrow.